Cue Freebird and whatever tragically hip song you want. We have the gold medal game everybody wanted. TV executives, fans, coaches, players, GMs, all of it. And we have it. And we'll have it on Sunday as the U.S. and Canada will meet for the gold medal for the third time since the NHL began participating in the Olympics in 1998. They will meet. Of course, Canada won 5-2 in Salt Lake City in 2002, and Sidney Crosby's golden goal in 2010 made it a 3-2 win. That, of course, is Frank Saravalli, the hockey insider, live from Milan, Italy, and I am John Butchergrass. So, Frank, this is what everybody wanted, and Sunday, 8:10 Eastern, 5:10 Pacific, the gold medal game from Italy will commence.
Take it and shoot it into my veins. I mean, we've been talking about this, thinking about this, dreaming about this for the last 12 years since NHL players played in the Olympics in Sochi. The U.S. has run into disappointment after disappointment, whether it's in overtime at the Four Nations Face-Off Championship game 1 year ago, or whether it was way back in 2010, the chance to rip Canada's hearts out on home soil in Vancouver. The U.S. said before they went to this tournament that they were collecting Canadian tears, and they have that chance now, and no one will be satisfied on either side with a silver medal. It truly is winner take all, and the second place award goes into the garbage.
Canada has won 15 of the 19 meetings all-time at the Winter Olympic Games against U.S., 4-1 with NHL participation. USA beat Canada just once. That was a preliminary game in Vancouver in 2010. And, of course, Frank, also the Four Nations really whetted the appetite last year. Just a year ago, obviously, we saw what that meant at that time, the buildup of not having best on best for so long. And now just 12 months later, we're right back. What a supercharged, adrenaline-charged moment for the sport of professional hockey, obviously in North America, to see if this impetus can help keep growing the game and have these two great moments back-to-back within 12 months.
I would bet that this is going to be the most watched hockey game ever. I mean, it certainly has that possibility. And with that, I think Dylan Larkin hit it on the head after the U.S. romped Slovakia in the semifinal tonight. He said, "This just feels right." If we had gotten to a gold medal game that, had one of these other countries, not to say that it would have been a disappointment, but from a viewing perspective, from the two best teams in the tournament, from the two best rosters heading into this tournament, this is what it's all about. This was the clash that we had been waiting for. But as we learned over these last two knockout days, far from a guarantee. I mean, this was really in peril at many different points. And both of these countries, in different ways, found ways to deliver and make Sunday a reality.
Right. And John Cooper himself said it, after the game today, that it is never easy.
Everybody said, "Oh, well, Canada's going to get to the final." Like, it's hard. It's really hard to do. Like, other teams want to knock you out, and you. I don't know. There's never the walk in the park. There wasn't a walk in the park in 2010 for Canada. There wasn't a walk in the park in 2014 for Canada. Like, you have to do these things, but you have to be prepared to change things around in these short tournaments, and putting all the Macs together. I didn't expect to use that so early, and then putting, that group together. I didn't expect to put it together actually this late. The timing's everything.
Yeah, if we're talking about a team that was maybe the best ever, it's not reflected in the ice time that this is not the best ever. I mean, when you play Macklin Celebrini 25-53, Nathan MacKinnon 21-51, Connor McDavid, who wore the C today in Sidney Crosby's stead, at 25-20, that's a top-heavy team, Frank, however you look at it.
Yeah, and I certainly don't disagree. And I think maybe that's one of the biggest surprises. Not only just that Canada looked so good during the preliminary round and has looked so shaky at times in these last two knockout games. It's really the idea that you take one player out of Canada's lineup in Sidney Crosby. And then all of a sudden you're looking around going, okay, where else is the production coming from? What happened to Bo Horvat? What happened to Mark Stone? What happened to all these different players along the way? Mitch Marner had a great look late in the third period, but he's been relatively quiet outside of the massive goal that he scored. And that is certainly going to be a question mark for Canada, is this team that has the super abundance of firepower. Why is it that they're relying on loading up on one line to control the game shift after shift after shift? And where is everyone else?
And of course, that's what, obviously Edmonton Oilers fans know what that's about. When you have Connor McDavid on the bench, it's hard not to throw him out there on offensive zone faceoffs, especially again. And we talked about it on the show last night that if they're trailing early, this was going to happen. Now, maybe if they get out 2-0, then they can roll. They can use their speed. They can all play fast. And I don't think, and Nathan MacKinnon looks like he's still kind of struggling. You mentioned he was, puking on the bench the other day. Even when he was celebrating there, he's like, I'm trying to conserve energy here when he got his big goal. So,
he played 2 minutes and 33 seconds consecutively at that point when he scored that goal. He had been on the ice forever.
Right. So let's just talk about the game, because you were there. So it's always, best to be there because you can really feel the tension in the rink. Just talk about how even the pregame skate and the puck being dropped to start the game, and how it felt the first 5 minutes, and then what happened after that. What did it feel like today? Do you feel like, as the puck dropped and the first 60 seconds is played, or the first couple of shifts, it's like, okay, Canada's got this. This will be easy, or this was going to be hard. Any signs early?
I got to tell you, even when Canada was down, I never had a sense that they were losing this game. And I know that sounds funny to say, down 2-0, and you're like, oh man, this is a gut check moment. I mean, I was even texting a buddy. I said, if Finland doesn't score here to make it 3-1 late in the second period, they have no chance, not a prayer. I mean,
yeah.
Finland, they sort of went into this prevent defense. It's like a classic late game football thing that you just give up 3 touchdowns while trying to hold on to a 30-point lead, and you're somehow gagging on it. And they went into a shell. It was like, let's just collapse. We'll fall into ourselves right in front of the net. We'll see if we can just get enough saves to squeak by. They had no interest in being the aggressor, which really shocked me. It was almost like, how do you constantly try and defend to win? Not with that firepower from Canada. And so I don't know. I just never, it's not that there was an idea that Canada couldn't lose. It was just that even when they were down, I didn't think that they had lost control and were in a position where they wouldn't win.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. When it was 2-1, and as the time ticked, I kept saying to myself, next goal wins. Next goal wins. Like, if Canada ties it, they're probably going to keep the momentum. But, Finland had a couple of shots. They had chances. Larkin had a really great chance coming down the wing. If he could have picked a corner, he shot it 3 feet wide. They had a couple other chances. So I understand you don't want to make it easy for Canada. You'd rather, let's just keep it really tight. We're going to play, our 2 safeties deep, like in football, and don't let us beat us deep with that's a 2-on-1 or breakaway in hockey, and then just pack it in the red zone, and then hope we might get 1 or 2 chances a period and that we cash in. And if we get 3 goals, we win. I think they really felt that we score 3 times, we're going to win. As it turned out, like you said, they just, Aho was too good of a player just to kind of disappear offensively and not really see him.
Well, I think that's one interesting part of this, that had Canada lost this game, I'm sure some of the commentary would have been, well, we didn't have Sidney Crosby. That's a huge hit. And the only thing I was thinking to myself the whole game was, I wonder how different this game would have been had Alexander Barkov been playing, because Finland is also missing their best player. And so you try and size those 2 teams up appropriately. And that was one thing that really stood out. But you mentioned or asked me about the energy in the building. It was way more anxious, way more frenetic, way more anxiety producing, being down to the checks in the quarters. Like, they seemed like they were on their heels for so much of that at times Canada looked like they were playing scared. And I never got a feeling that Canada lost any belief in themselves in this semifinal, that trailing 2-0, they were just like, okay, we'll chip away at this and get back one by one. And that's exactly what they did. It was pretty methodical.
Right. And that was kind of the Nature's Pasternak point I made yesterday, saying that those guys are one-time shooters, and that if they came back and tie, they can come back because they're kind of more those gunslingers, where the Finns tend to really kind of pack it in and have a true pack mentality. And sometimes that can be a detriment when you look into, really impose your will on a game. But again, you mentioned, it was a different kind of adversity, but I'm with you. I felt like Canada's okay here. The Finns are just not given enough of a push here to be overly afraid. And every shift that Lindell goes out there, every shift or whatever, and then they're going to commit penalties. When the other team has the puck, you're going to commit penalties. And John Cooper, we mentioned, he talked about how it's never easy, but he also explained the tone on the bench as his team faced the adversity of trailing.
It's a huge cliche when people say, "Oh my God, you have to have adversity to succeed." It's easy to say until you're actually in the adversity. Then you're like, "This sucks. I don't like it." But I've got a group that really can handle it, and there's just, I said this before, they're comfortable being uncomfortable, and you don't want to put yourself in those situations. I think it was our bad that. We consider we gave them 2 freebies. We, lose a face-off, put it on a world-class player stick, it's in the net, and then we give up a shorthanded goal. So to me, we're stubbing our own toes. But I just loved how relentless we became. There wasn't a worry on the bench. There was just a drive. I thought we really leaned on them in the second period. We were fortunate to cut it to 1. Now it's just 1 shot. And I was just thankful for the guys. They didn't wait till the 3-minute mark to tie it. They did it, at the 9-minute mark. But there was a will and a want, and I thought we were, we were hoping to tire them out and get the result. We did, and it worked out.
Yeah, so Finland's winning midway through the third period. This is what they want now. Now they got to try to bring it home. And then what does, Brad Marchand do? He just sinks to his competitive instincts. What can I do here? And he goes to the front of the net. He kind of goes into the crease on his own. Then he gets bumped into the goalie. Saros kind of regroups quickly, but he's going to be affected a little bit. The puck went off his chest and in. Maybe with no contact in a normal situation, he comes out. He's more square. It doesn't deflect off his chest. It drops down or whatever. And also Shea Theodore, he's one of those guys, Frank, that can play the offside as a defenseman. And when you can do that, then you're open up to one-timers on 5-on-5, right? And that's just classic Shea Theodore, that he can play that side and he's ready for a one-timer.
Yeah, he actually had a couple other really strong point shots before that went in. And that was part of Canada's game plan. Part of it was instinctual with Finland collapsing on itself. But Mitch Marner told us after the game that it was definitely something that they were talking about on the bench. Let's move the puck low to high because they're collapsing, and let's see if we can find a way to, have some cross ice passes with our D to get pucks on net. And they were able to create from that specifically. But John Cooper mentioned that he felt like they just continued to push. And Sam Bennett told me after the game, we actually played better when we were down, as opposed to being, even up for a while as they started the game. And so, look, Canada deserves full marks for their stick-to-itiveness. Like, not every team has that gumption or has that magic in them to come back. Typically, the Finns are one of those teams that just, they can ice a game like few others, but not against this Canada team. They have this thing to them, and that is the US's biggest challenge, I think, heading into the gold medal game. They are a very difficult team to kill. They are always going to be a threat because of the scoring touch that they have, that no matter how much they're down or what time of game it is, that they're going to have a real chance. And they're not going to be dead until you drive a fork through them.
And then, of course, so we're 2-2 now after the Theodore goal. And, Mikkola just takes a bad penalty. It's a play in the corner. He doesn't really need to do what he did. One hand on the stick, it flails up. He gets the penalty. And then so the power play, and you can kind of see it coming here. It seemed like MacKinnon was still kind of fighting it on that shift. Just it wasn't quite feeling, I thought. But then suddenly, it all once again, it's Macklin Celebrini in the middle of it. He's behind the net. He makes an unbelievable dime pass, the secondary assist through traffic right to the tape of MacKinnon. So then MacKinnon can then quickly make the pass over. Or to McDavid, who can then quickly make the pass over to MacKinnon, and bam, it's in the net. Again, Celebrini, Frank, he just seems to make the right play at the right time. He seems to have a mental and emotional stamina where even if he's playing a lot, he's just always aware. He's like, 24/7 on guard, on watch, on the wall. You want him on that wall. You need him on that wall because he's always paying attention. He never even rests a little bit. He's got and all the greats have that stamina. Michael Jordan, any athlete you name, they just have so much mental competitive stamina that they're always ready to make the right play.
It's incredible to watch. And just about everyone from John Cooper to all the players that move through the mix zone, unprompted and organically praised the board battles that were won by Macklin Celebrini and even Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon down that stretch, because they saved so many plays that could have been a flip out of the zone or could have been an icing on that PK. And instead, they had umpteen chances at that moment in time. And I think the one amazing part about Celebrini, you mentioned the stamina. For me, it's this idea that he's never overwhelmed. He hasn't been in a spot yet, whether it's been physically or mentally, where he's been beaten. There's been a couple chances where he just, maybe didn't get enough wood on it or was mistimed or something, but it was never like the moment at any point has been too big for him. It's almost like he believes or thinks that he belongs on this stage playing with the very best players in the world. And you then just go out and do it. And he's repeated that night after night here in the Olympics. I mean, he's trailing only Connor McDavid in points in this tournament, and he's been unbelievable.
Yeah, the MVP is up for grabs for this tournament. It is clearly up for grabs going to the gold medal game. Canada wins. Who has the better game, Celebrini or McDavid? Will likely win it. And he just reminds me of Magic Johnson, Macklin Celebrini, Frank. Magic goes to Michigan State, wins the national championship when he's 18, goes to the NBA, goes to the finals. Kareem's hurt. He plays center. He scores 40 points and they win the championship. That's what Macklin does. Like you said, they're not phased. They just compete hard. They play hard. They have concentration for a long period of time, which enables them to make these plays. And so again, the power play goal, the 5-on-4 goal, unfortunate that it kind of ends that way, especially if you're on Finland. And Teemu Selanne didn't like the call, Frank. He went right to the old X and went right to social media to kind of let the world know beating greatest hockey country in the world and Canadian referees same night is impossible, I guess. Absolutely embarrassing penalty, 90 seconds to go in an Olympic semifinal. What a joke. Emoji, swearing, expletive, denied.
I don't know how I feel about this. I think there was a lot of sore loser energy that came from Finland, and I guess I understand part of it, but maybe don't sit back in a shell and get outshot 31-9 over the last two periods and think that somehow is going to be a recipe for success. Do I love the call in that circumstance? No. It was
I don't
chintzy.
like those little high sticking calls. Look the other way.
It wasn't one of those ones where like a guy got two-handed in the face and you go, oh, that was blatant and obvious. This was a flimsy, one-handed. Some have argued repeatedly on social media tonight that MacKinnon actually lifted the stick. Either way, what you can clearly say is there was a reaction, whether it was MacKinnon selling it or whether that was just human instinct in the moment. But it made the call happen because he jacked his head back. And I'm not putting that on Nathan MacKinnon. That's what any good gamer in that situation would do late in a single elimination game as you're tied and heading toward overtime. But nonetheless, it does feel like a crappy way to have this game that was who knows what our ending would have been. You could tell once, with all the momentum Canada had to then get the power play where they've been the best in the tournament, they weren't going to cough up that kind of opportunity in that moment in time.
Yeah.
There's no way that they weren't scoring right there to stick a dagger in Finland. That was it.
Absolutely. And, and I think one reason why Selanne, what he was talking about as well is that, let's face it, there's NHL referees in this tournament, and they're either American or Canadian, and they're mostly Canadian. And, let's face it, there's just some sports, and some of these countries always feel like, you know, man, we're going up against referees too, who certainly aren't going to have a major bias, but there can be an emotional bias, or there can be just a look, right? Just like that it just doesn't look great.
Well, and I think that's part of what that was. It didn't look great. It didn't feel great, but also recognize what the rule book says, which is if you get hit in the face with a stick, it doesn't classify it by severity. It says if you get hit in the face with a stick, that's a high sticking penalty. And
Right.
so the call is made and there's no subjectivity to it. It's one of those automatics. Hit in the face with a stick, high sticking penalty. I just think in that moment in time, in an elimination game, in the Olympics, in the final 2 minutes, that you have to have some kind of subjectivity to it, because otherwise, like, you end up with a really flimsy call.
And of course, we had a couple situations where we could have seen reviews, Frank, and we saw one on the possible offside on that goal. It was very close as Macklin Celebrini was dragging his skate. Some people, again, on social media claiming that they thought he was offside. And obviously, the play was Saros. The international rule was a little bit different going into the crease than it is in the NHL. What was the scuttlebutt? What was the post-game discussions about the reviews?
Yeah, I thought they got the offside right.
I thought
It
they
was
did too.
very close. Yeah, and the puck was in the air, but as the puck was in the air, Celebrini's skate was still on the correct side of the far edge of the blue, which is all that's required. And he did a masterful job of recognizing that and dragging his foot at the same time to try and ensure that it was onside. I get why Finland challenged, but I just felt like maybe the better challenge for them would have been on the game tying goal, as you mentioned, that because there is so much subjectivity and because the international rulebook is a little bit different, that they might have had a better chance in that moment to get the second one overturned as opposed to the third. But it's almost like once you get there, you're just hoping for anything to happen, no matter how close it is. It's like a last ditch effort to see if we could somehow get the game to overtime.
Right. And it was close enough, I think, that they did make the right call. Like, even if they weren't 100% sure, it's like, well, maybe they'll see it's offside because right now we're out of time. And, but certainly, yeah, that's why I thought with the international rule, maybe someone saw that, okay, Marchand went in there first. The hollow bump wasn't violent. It was just kind of a nudge. And then he hit Saros. Did he have enough time to regroup? That's very debatable. Someone might have said no. That's why I thought at that situation, too, it would have been worth it because I just didn't see them score another goal, Frank. Their shot chart certainly showed their lack of shots and where they were getting them. Like I said, I think they had two really good chances in the third period. That's just about it. Lekkonen's wrist shot, a shot from the high slot that, again, Binnington, who's been very aggressive. We talk about this. Someone just gives him a deke, they'll go right around him. But, once the lack of offense, that's why I thought they could have challenged the 2-2 goal.
Yeah, and so what you see on here is shot attempts in the second and third period for Finland. And, I mean, it highlights to me how they just backed off. I mean, and it's the second period that stands out more than the third. You're up 2-0 at that point. You've got to be pedaled down trying to, like, Czechia just showed you that Canada wilted a bit when they were the aggressor. So to sit back at
you're
that
playing
point,
with house
it was
money.
Everything that you played right into what Canada wanted to do, which was let's dominate you and control the puck in your end. And they created a shooting gallery for themselves. And then by the third period, like, it's a little bit too late. So like I said, outshot 31-9 over the final two periods. Like, Finland didn't feel like they had a prayer.
Yeah, it's human nature not to want to make a mistake, not to want to hurt your team and your teammates. But man, up 2-0, then you got some house money. You can be a little aggressive because then you have some, you can give one up. You're still leading. But they just kind of got suckered into. They couldn't resist. Just it's 2-0. Let's just bolt down. They can't get 3 goals on us, and it cost them.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up the
Before we-
question, Sidney Crosby.
I was just going to say, before we move on, what do you make of
Yep.
Jordan Binnington? The Haula goal was a tough one. The shorthanded break, the Rantanen goal was off the face-off. Did he leave you a little bit nervous at all in terms of what went in or how he played? Or is this the guy that's, I mean, I'm assuming they're absolutely sticking with him because they've won and they're 5-0 and he's responsible for 4 of them. But did he leave you wanting at all?
Just a little bit. I think there's room there. Like I said, MacKinnon came down, had a lot of net, and what I see, Frank, I've talked about it for a couple of shows, is he is so aggressive. I think he's trying to cut down so much angle. Now, maybe he trusts his teammates in that situation, but I don't know if he feels small and he's trying to get bigger by coming out. But he has clearly been the most aggressive goaltender, way outside of his crease. And I just think that's someone. So that would, if the U.S. is going to provide a number of scoring, and that's the point at this point, is Finland just didn't have enough volume of scoring chances. If the U.S. is getting a legitimate, definable scoring chance, and they get up to that 15 area, I just think that's the recipe of success for Team USA, where that 880 regular season save percentage might rear its head, and now you're giving up a goal or two every 10 scoring chances. So you get 15, there's a good chance you're going to get 3-4 goals.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that I think his defenseman in front of him, another day without Josh Morrissey, that Travis Sanheim came in and he was nails. He was really good in the semifinal. Shea Theodore gave them way better minutes on top of the goal that he scored. And that defense performed better than I expected them to in those moments. That guys that have sort of been unheralded or had question marks, they were really good.
Yeah, Doughty's only playing 753. They obviously do not trust him, his speed, and it could be less against USA. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Sanheim, 12:38, noticeable, confident, on his toes late in the game when they were trying to get that tying goal. Pretty noticeable. Harley's up to 21 minutes now, almost 21 minutes. So he's kind of really found his game at the Olympics. I think Stars fans are excited. Maybe he returns and he's back to being Thomas Harley. And we should say the name Cale Makar at least once in this show. That dude is a threat every time coming downhill. He put so much pressure on the defense. He got the assist on the Reinhart goal. There were other times, like he's just a 3-point game waiting to happen every game, Frank, the way he just pressures defenses.
I get what you're saying, and I'm obviously a huge fan of Cale Makar and his game. I do not think he's been nearly as impressive these Olympics as he typically is, and I don't know why that is. But you see what Quinn Hughes has done with the U.S. Like I said it last show, like I think this is the moment that Quinn Hughes is taking the mantle from Cale Makar. It's not that he's been unproductive. It's just that he hasn't been at the same level as Hughes. And it's not just a stat thing. It's a visual thing. Like Makar's been good, but he hasn't been running the show good the way that Quinn Hughes has been driving the U.S. offense.
So let's talk Sidney Crosby. What do you think the move is for the gold medal game? Do you bring him on board in a inspirational way to put him in uniform? He's still talking to the team in between periods, so he is a presence on the team. Do you risk that with the extra, obviously, player you're allowed at the Olympics? Or do you go full strength and say, if you didn't play today, this obviously won't be 100%. Whatever percentage you want, is that enough and a reason to put him in the game in a uniform?
Well, let's recap first what happened on Friday. Remember at the beginning of the tournament, Canada inadvertently closed one of their practices to media, and they then afterwards vowed that it would never happen again. Well, they had a morning skate on Friday for their optionals, and they closed it again to the shock of absolutely no one. So media could not come in to watch. And Sidney Crosby was there on the ice, apparently testing out this knee and giving it a go in a twirl. Now, we don't know the results of that because we couldn't see it, and they wouldn't even confirm that actually happened, but that is the belief. and that Canada tried just about everything that they could to make this work. This was a secret, even talking to players on the team after the game, that they didn't even know how this was going to go. They were on their way to the rink asking, hey, is Sid in? Is he out? And the people that are the powers that be would just shrug. So I take that as this was probably a bit closer than we realized, even though the odds were very clearly stacked against him playing. That leads me to believe that with an additional 48 hours here, that they will find some kind of solution to allow him to be the 13th forward. And the first thing that comes to mind is Steven Stamkos in the bubble with Tampa playing for John Cooper. He got exactly one shift in that Stanley Cup final clinching game, and he scored. And I think that the roster rules and how they're so different than the NHL benefits Canada to allow them to do this from both a potential, hey, maybe we give you some spot duty, but also from that inspirational leadership perspective. Connor McDavid said after the game that he was just keeping the sea warm for Sidney Crosby when he wore it, because IIHF rules dictate that you have to name a captain. That I think Canada is going to rally around his presence being on the bench. Nathan MacKinnon, after he scored the game-winning goal, he's pointing into the stands. That was directly for Sidney Crosby to say, you wanted us to get you a shot, to give you a chance at playing in the gold medal game. Well, we just went out and did it for you. And that means something. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him penciled in as the 13th forward on Sunday in this magical story of guy who's quite obviously dealing with some kind of MCL sprain here in 4 days' time is able to come back and be some kind of factor.
Yeah, you wonder who might come out just from ice time from forwards today. It's Hagel, Jarvis, and Reinhart. It's not going to be Hagel because John Cooper wouldn't do that. But it's either going to be Jarvis or Reinhart, you'd think.
My guess would be Reinhart. He started today's game as the 13th forward, although I will say that Sam Bennett did take a really unnecessary penalty that put Canada in that tough spot where they gave up a power play goal. But Bennett is the reigning Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and he brings a physical force and edge that Reinhart doesn't. Reinhart is so smart. I just feel like he's been poorly utilized in this tournament.
That Bennett, Marchand, Wilson line was pretty good in the third, right? That was like playoff hockey stuff. Again, on the goal, they were hitting. I just wonder if John Cooper sees that and says, that's something we can match up against a couple of these U.S. lines. It's going to be kind of interesting to see.
He actually talked about that after the game, and he said that it's not – a line isn't always about points or production. It can also be about intimidation. He said it can be about wearing the opponent down, and then it can also be about setting up the next line for the next shift. And so he said that he got to that line later in the tournament than he thought he might put them together, but that they came together at the right time. That was the end of that quote, timing is everything, that in this case really seemed to work out.
Yeah, I think they match up against really almost every line the U.S. has. Whether you go out against Kachuk and just really and just really give it to him, or the second line to try to intimidate Boldy and Gensel with some hard hits in the corner and stuff. So that's going to be fun to watch in the gold medal game. And again, we got to mention Connor McDavid. We mentioned Connor McDavid's new points record for the Olympics now.
Yeah, I mean, we should, because you said that the MVP is up for grabs, and I don't know that it is. In my view, like, as good as Celebrini has been, if Celebrini was on his own, would he still be doing this? And I think the answer is no, because he's been playing with McDavid, who's been on this other world on this Olympic tour, and he's flying at a level that I don't know that we've seen. Like, I don't know that anyone's ever played hockey better than Connor McDavid has in this tournament, as he sets the new Olympic record for single tournament points with NHL players participating. And the scary part is obviously still has a gold medal game to go to widen that gap. And I thought it was really disappointing, and fans can say whatever they want, but I'm obviously monitoring and watching social media all game, and I'm seeing my feed, and just this idea that they were calling him Connor McLoser, and he never wins anything, and we're cooked with this guy wearing the C. It's like, I don't know what you're watching. This is the best player on planet Earth that is literally trying to do everything in his power to lift your team and your country. And yeah, has it been a while since he's won anything at the NHL level? He's never won anything. He's been a while since he's won anything, period. But that doesn't mean that the gap in ice time between him and many of the other Canadians on this roster is not without merit. The coaches would like to have it more balanced, but they're so good that they can't help but to go to these guys shift after shift. That's how much of a difference maker Connor McDavid has been leading that line.
Absolutely. And so it'll be fun to watch those two again. Yeah, Connor McDavid, he's one of those players. You mentioned how much he helped Celebrini, just whether it's Joe Thornton or Sidney Crosby, if you play with them on a line, you're going to have a bigger house. So because you're going to score more, you're going to have greater stats, and so you're going to have a bigger salary. And that's what those guys do. They make people rich who get to play with him. And Celebrini was going to make his own money anyway, but yeah, it's but I do think if he pops in 2 goals, it gets 3 points, and for some reason McDavid has 1, and especially gets a game winner, it's close enough. I still, it's close enough, but certainly McDavid is the favorite as he currently has that new Olympic points record with NHL players use. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Team USA gets it done. Freebird, cue Freebird. Frank, in the end, it wasn't really that difficult against Slovakia.
They slaughtered them from puck drop. And remember how I mentioned in yesterday's show that there was this feeling when I spent time around the Slovaks after their quarterfinal win? It was like, we're just happy to be here. And that played out along with this notion that I couldn't help but think of the Herb Brooks. So you just beat the Russians, and now you've got this gold medal game against Sweden. Like, you better deliver, or else you're going to take this to your graves. And then he said again,
Yep.
Your bleeping graves. If you watch Canada somehow make its way, overcoming a deficit right before your game, like in the same arena, you're already in the building, you're watching it in your dressing room. You watch Canada, the team that you've wanted a piece of for so long, advance to the gold medal game, and you can't hold up your end of the bargain against Samuel Hellebuyck and Slovakia, who entered this tournament as kind of the 8th best team or federation in the world. I mean, they would have taken it to their graves, and right out of the chute, they were on them, and it was incredibly impressive. They didn't take their foot off the gas until the 3rd period, when they're going, all right, we're up 5-0. Let's not get hurt here.
Yeah, Herb Brooks, take it to your effing graves. And that's the cool part about the Netflix documentary is that the guy said he didn't swear. So when you hear a swear word from someone who doesn't normally swear, it has an extra effect. And they went out and got it done. And of course, the only thing about that box score that's troubling, Frank, is the 5 power plays Slovakia. Team USA cannot do that against Canada. Again, we'll talk about that more in our gold medal pregame show tomorrow. Let's focus on this win today. And really, Dylan Larkin. He really kind of is, in a way, I don't know, the heart and soul. Maybe I'm trying to think of the right word to describe him, but he's really has a really, he's I like that. He's a very interesting slot, a very interesting role in terms of the energy, the patriotic energy, and this team. The fact it's a great team that he's on. I think he feels like, this is I like this slot. I don't have to be up there at the top, but it means a lot to me. I'm so glad to be here. It's just it's a cool story. It's a cool slot to observe him, watching him play these games.
Well, because you're right. He's not counted on being the guy. He's just one of the guys. And yet he's maybe, and this is not to put anyone else down, like this is truly to build up Dylan Larkin. I think he cares more than anyone else.
I think that's a good way to put it. I agree.
Like he just wants it. And so the fact that he's delivered 2 very important goals for this team in the knockout stage, and just the celebration, like, you can feel the energy pouring out of him as he does it. And this, this means more to him than anything else in his career. And not that the Olympics hasn't meant a lot to other players or that they don't care. It's just that he's here and everyone else is a little bit here in terms of volume and pride. And I just think you can notice it. He's embodying and carrying this U.S. team with what he's wearing on his sleeve.
And I think, as I think about it now, and I remember talking to him in Boston last year before Four Nations and how jacked he was about that. And then subsequently, the last couple of years, what he's been through with his young family and his wife gives him an amazing amount of perspective. But part of this is, he wants to win, like you said, more than anybody. And there's other people who want to win similarly, but he does it almost in a gratitude, joyful, passionate way, right? He's just so fired up, where other people put so much pressure on themselves. If I don't win, Debbie Downer kind of a vibe. Or he's just like, yeah, I mean, he's going to be hurt if they don't win this gold medal game, but he's approaching it in the way that we should approach things, big things in our own lives. Is you do it with gratitude, you do it with passion, you do it with joy, you compete, and then the chips fall where they may, especially in a team sport.
Right. And I think he realizes that with his skill set, with his talent and game, that, I mean, he's one of those guys without that separating him. Maybe he's on the outside looking in. Like, he's not a top 6 player on this team, and he's not counted on to be that guy that's the ultimate difference maker. And yet he is providing the difference when it matters for the U.S. And that part is seeping out to everyone, for everyone to see, that just the fire that's raging in him to be successful at this tournament, to help his country. He's a dog. Like, he's a true leader on this team without wearing a letter.
Great point. Yeah, and he has horsepower. This is a man who can skate. He's like a Hummer in mud. Like, he can churn those thighs and he can skate. And let's face it, Frank, he'll get good matchups. And I'm sure the Team USA coaching staff, there's a D pair out there that he may be able to exploit, being on the line that he is, because obviously they're going to match up. We'll see what they choose to do in terms of Taves and Makar, and how they, what are the top 2 U.S. lines they're going to choose to defend more. Or you reach your point like, we got to approach them both as ones, and what's our plan? So this is where I love the coaching aspect of this tournament and this one game tournament now, is what is the Canadian coaching staff thinking about? How do we match up? What's our best? What defenseman would we ideally want to have on the ice, against a certain line? And what forward group do we want ideally against this line?
Yeah. And guess what? That's exactly what the U.S. is going to be asking themselves as they go,
right.
I don't know if it really matters who we put out on the ice, because our defense has been this good, making life easy for Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, another textbook defensive effort. So both the U.S. and Canada have allowed 8 goals against in the 5 games that they've played. Both teams are 5-0. They're perfect heading into the gold medal game. One of them will be leaving with a blemish and a loss and a lot of questions for all time. But this U.S. defense has made itself into one of the best Olympic defense corps that we've ever seen. And the shot chart, again, tells a beautiful story for the U.S. of keeping Slovakia to the outside. I mean, look at these are all shot attempts. First period, there's basically 2 in that home plate area. The second period, there's essentially 4. Not all of them even hit the net. And then in the third period, you see a couple goals here. But again, by that point, score effects, the U.S. was up 5-0, and they took their foot off the gas, because they're saying, we just want to be healthy and intact heading into the gold medal game. Who cares if they score a couple goals? We don't need to go out of our way and or do something stupid that's going to cost us or cost me a gold medal game appearance. So, I mean, if you get through a game And the Slovaks had been spunky, right? Like they've had Dvorsky and Slavkovsky, and even from the point, Simone Nemeth has been a force in this tournament. Those guys have been able to create offense, and they didn't even get close. They didn't sniff Connor Hellebuyck.
And that Connor Hellebuyck is now the key word, because Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon and Macklin Celebrini are going to get to the home plate area. I think, Connor McDavid can go where he wants. That's his greatness. He can take the puck, he can get to the middle, and they'll get chances there, more than the Americans have seen the last couple of games. This will be the toughest test for them. So therefore, Frank, this falls on Connor Hellebuyck. It's going to be his toughest game to date. He's going to see quality shots. So far, so great. 4-0, 947 save percentage. If it's 947 on Sunday, they're going to win the gold medal. There's no doubt in my mind that is the case. So this is a great thing. That's why we talk about Dylan Larkin. It'd be an amazing moment for him to win a gold medal. Connor McDavid to win that first big prize. Got 4 nations, but this is a whole different level. And for Connor Hellebuyck, Frank, this is a big moment for him to win a significant turn. And even John Cooper, for him, he hasn't won a gold medal yet. And so many people, but I think Hellebuyck, will he have his A game? Will he make those big saves on Nathan MacKinnon one-timers, slap shots from the point from Theodore, and wrist shots from Cale Makar coming downhill? There's a lot on those shoulders right there.
There are, but I would say that it comes down to making one save, and that's it. Can you make the save that UC Saros couldn't for Finland? Can you make the save that the Czechs couldn't, Dan Vladar, on the other day? I mean, they're looking at, can Connor Hellebuyck make that one extra save on Connor McDavid in the Four Nations championship game in overtime? If he does, and who knows if Austin Matthews buries on yet another opportunity that he has later in OT. Canada has that never say die, we're going to be in the mix, we don't quit. But if you can get that one extra save to snuff them out, like we all believe this is going to be an incredibly close game on Sunday with a ton of nervous energy. Can Hellebuyck be the difference for one shot? That's the difference between gold and silver.
Hey, maybe it'll be 6-5, but I think many people believe it's going to look like the Four Nations final in Boston last year. Very similar, very small amount of ice. These players are going to go all out. Every single player is going to go absolutely all out every shift, especially as the game remains close and 0-0. Or is tied as long as that could be. It's going to look like that, and it's just going to be, the anticipation is building. I don't think the rating can be maybe as much as it could be being that early in the morning. There's just some casual fans who are not going to get up that early or not realize it's on. It's still going to be a huge number, but ultimately not best that it's 8:00 Eastern time, 5:00 Pacific. They're going to lose some viewers, but it'll be replayed. There'll be highlights, and so it'll get plenty of content. And so we shall see. But this brings us to Ask the Insider. Why does the NHL not avoid referee optics? We touched on it earlier, but explain the situation, Frank, and what you. Oh, by the way, it's Canada gets last change, right? They're the home team.
They're the 1 seed, yes.
Just want to make sure you have to clarify that for people, because coming in and they might have thought the U.S. was, but now being the 1 seed now, they do get the last change, which is obviously a bit of a factor. But Ask the Insider, Frank Saravalli, talk about the NHL referee optics. And especially with this gold medal game now.
Yeah, so just for a point of clarification, the NHL essentially is controlling the referee assignments for this tournament. They're doing it in partnership with the IIHF, but they've made it really clear that they want their NHL-based experienced crews calling these games as opposed to the IIHF guys that are also part of this tournament. And so what do I mean by this question? When I ask it, I know in my heart and in my brain that NHL referees are above reproach. These guys are not, laying on country lines or anything like that. They're not calling games by their passport or anything like that. But for an optics perspective, what I don't understand is why the NHL puts themselves in these situations to be able to ask questions like this or get tweets like the one that we saw from Teemu Selanne. So here were the assignments for tonight's games. 2 Canadians doing the Canada game, 1 American doing the American game. Basically, Chris Rooney's the only American NHL ref in this tournament anyway. Why wouldn't you flip it around? Why wouldn't, just for optics sake, you put
Right.
Chris Rooney, the American, on the Canadian-Finland game and have 2 Canadians do the US-Slovakia game? I think everyone would feel a little bit more at ease with the notion of that. And so you could say, well, Frank, you're making too big a deal of this. And maybe that is true, but I think at a certain point, optics do matter. And I think back to last year's Four Nations face-off in Boston, by the way, Chris Rooney's hometown. And for the championship game, they decided to go with 2 Canadian referees, and one of the 2 linespersons was also Canadian in a US-Canadian game. So 3 of the 4 officials on the assignment are Canadian in a Canada-US game. That doesn't make any sense to me when you have the ability to do 2 and 2. Keep it fair and keep it balanced, even just from an optics perspective. So here's my bet, and I'll be real curious to see how this ends up playing out. I would bet you that the 2 referees that are calling Sunday's gold medal game will be 2 Canadians. Now, I wouldn't bet my house on it, but I would bet based on the way the NHL will just say, hey, these are just the best officials, and that is that. I just think from an optics perspective, that's not what should happen, and that it should be split down the middle based on the 2 teams that are playing. Just my thought.
Yeah, I cover obviously the NCAA hockey tournament for the past 20 years and the Frozen Four for the last 12. And if it's a Big Ten team playing a Hockey East team in the Frozen Four, the referees are not from either conferences. They're from another conference. That's how it's done. Like you said, a referee is not going to sully his reputation. He's not going to sully future tournaments like this, because this is extra money in their pocket. This is, these are nice little checks you want to get. So they're not, and with replay, everything is going to be looked at. So they're not going to do anything outlandishly dumb. But certainly you can not call, like we said, going back to the high sticking penalty that Selanne was talking about. They don't call every grab. They don't call every hook. They don't call every trip. They don't call every hold. But it seems like they do call every tap up to the face because it's an easy one, and also they don't want to not call it because it is basically an automatic penalty. And so, like they're above reproach. I wouldn't worry about it, but optically, like you said, why wouldn't you just have 1 American and 1 Canadian call the game?
So that we don't have to ask the question.
Right. All right. Hashtag hockey. We scan and scour the social media world to find you some cool pieces of video. And a lot of times I first see them on this show. That's why I like this segment. And I'm on my phone too much. Distracted players at NHL practices. NHL teams are back practicing again. We're just 5 days away from having NHL games again. And Frank, they just couldn't resist seeing how these games end when they're in the middle of a drill.
Oh, it's so great watching this. This is the Chicago Blackhawks in their practice. As a reminder, all the NHL teams are back practicing in the US and Canada. And with the time change, it's the middle of the day. So they're practicing. They go, hold on, we can't practice right now. This is, the final waning moments of whether or not Canada, for a lot of these guys, their home country, and maybe even some of their buddies are playing in this. We got to see this. I got messages from players around the NHL these last few days. Some were sitting around their player lounge at their team facility, all watching the game together. Others paused their workout in the weight room to be able to watch this. And still some others, particularly on the West Coast, were saying, wait, coach, are you serious? We're not really going out for practice right now in the middle of the game. They're so invested watching this, no surprise, but that it's causing everything else in the hockey world to come to a screeching halt.
Yeah, teams back practicing. They enjoyed their break. In fact, I've been to a couple golf courses down here in Florida where I live, and there was Red Wings players were here yesterday. Sabres players are over here. My son Jack, who caddies at a local course, had a couple Sabres on his bag the other last week. But they're back now, and again, 5 days until NHL hockey begins again on the 25th. All right, to the last word. Please stop trying to make hockey political. Frank, the floor is yours.
So I think we've jumped the shark a little bit here. And I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to make this too political. But I find it disappointing because as human beings, we are not monoliths. We are not just one thing and one thing only. And we end up in situations where Wayne Gretzky, the most decorated player of all time, proud Canadian, is at the Olympics and joins the CBC panel and is forced to essentially answer questions about, are you really even Canadian anymore? If you want to parse through the question, that's essentially what it was like, do you really even consider yourself Canadian now, considering that you like to play golf with Donald Trump? I mean, that was the undercurrent of the story. And while I appreciate that the question needed to be asked because so many Canadians have been upset, this whole notion that you have to draw a line in the sand and declare who you are in front of everyone and what your beliefs are, it feels wrong. And I'll take you through the other end of this, which is there was a big, it went across Fox News and everyone was talking about it, which was, look at Quinn Hughes. He said after being the hero for Team USA that he loves his country and the United States is the best country in the world. And it was like, that was somehow news that we've arrived at this point based on whatever political stuff is happening, that it's news that a player said that they love their country. It blows my mind that we've arrived at this point. Everyone should be proud of where they're from. One person, whoever's running a government, doesn't define me or you or anyone else. The flag, the history, everything is so much bigger than that. And Wayne Gretzky is like one of the best Canadians ever. The fact that he needs to be put on the stand in front of everyone at the Olympics is wrong. The fact that Quinn Hughes saying that about his country is noteworthy is mind-blowing. We've lost the plot here. And I just want to bring some sanity back into it, which is it's okay to be who you are, whatever your beliefs are. That's what makes this free Western world so great. And I'll leave it at that.
Amen. Let's face it, it's been difficult to be patriotic in America the last 10 years. You were looked at as a bad person if you loved America, flat out. And that has changed a little bit, thankfully. I think we've got a little bit of sanity, a little bit back, like you said. I love seeing the American women arm in arm, singing the national anthem proudly. That stuff moves me, And, my mom was 94. She's still alive. She lost cousins in World War II. She lost family members, back, and they grew up with that. So my parents were very patriotic. They lived through World War II with people dying, brothers and sisters and cousins dying. And so it matters to them. They paid a price. That generation paid a price. And that's why they're patriotic. It's not other, like you said, it's not this complicated political issue by issue thing. It's just we love our country, and Finns love their country, and the Slovaks love their country, as they should. And yeah, I think we're returning, Frank, to a place of sanity, and I think hockey has a pretty good grasp on it. We love our Canadian-born players in America, and it's interesting seeing U.S.-based NHL teams send out congratulation tweets to Canadian-born players. Like, you would think maybe most of your fans of the Avalanche are rooting for Team USA, probably, right? But they don't hate Nathan MacKinnon under any circumstances.
But I love Canada. I've worked in Canada for 10 plus years. If the US isn't playing, I root for Canada. I want Canada to do well and to succeed. And I genuinely value all of my friendships and relationships. But I think this idea that you need to like stuff your patriotism in the closet and say like this whole notion of I'm proud to be American, like you need to hide that or do it in shame. It's disappointing. And I just think the fact that it made news that he said he was from the best country in the world because that's what his opinion is. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And he said it with such class, like Quinn does. He's just an understated dude, and it was great to hear that from him. I think it's good for young people to hear that and say, no, it's okay. You can be proud of America. Yeah, we're not perfect. No country is. You try to get better each generation. You work on things, But in the end, you believe in this place, and that's why people still want to come here and want to live
I
here.
don't care where you're
And
from.
I
Finland,
don't really either.
Czechia, Canada, Honduras, whatever your flag is and you're proud of it, fly it with all your might. That's it. Period. End of story.
And most people feel that way, yeah. But unfortunately, division sells and division works in many cases, and we know that's a whole other subplot as well. But in the end, yes, we love hockey. We love Canadian hockey players. They give us a great sport here. They still drive the sport. They give us great jobs, and they give us great entertainment. And whatever happens on Sunday, it's going to be a great day for hockey, to quote the great Bob Johnson. So I'm looking forward to it, Frank. But again, tomorrow we'll be back here, special time, just to give you, we are here on the weekends. We're normally not. We're normally a Monday through Friday outfit. But because this is special, it only happens every 4 years. And because we have this matchup, we're going to give you a gold medal game preview tomorrow. So Frank can give you the very latest. You never know what could happen. Maybe we'll hear some news on Sidney Crosby and skating or whatever. But I'm sure
Tage
either way,
Thompson.
they're going to. Tage Thompson. What's up with that?
Yeah, so he's expected to be available and to play on Sunday. Reminder, he left the game in the third period more for precautionary reasons after blocking a shot with his foot. But Mike Sullivan did say after the game that he expects Tage to be good to go. So stuff like that, there's lots of question marks surrounding both teams, more so for Canada. But the U.S. is going to be managing the pressure that's in front of them to finally break through.
So we'll talk about that noon Eastern, 9 Pacific tomorrow, Saturday, the very latest from Milan. Frank is there, of course, to get you ready for the gold medal game. Then afterwards, hey, let's face it, anytime you can talk hockey for an hour, that's fun. Put your phone on, listen in, put your TV on. Thank you for downloading the app. And a weekend of hockey talk will commence here on Victory Plus. So for the Hockey Insider, Frank Saravalli from Milan, I am John Butchergoss. We will see you tomorrow.